This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
It's September 13th. It's Tuesday. Thanks for joining us here. Ryan Jesperson, John Hicks.
Hi-yo.
How you doing, pal? You got that iOS 16 update all figured out on your iPhone yet? Are you good to go?
Oh, man, I'm deleting texts and editing
Spell checking everything. You're making spelling mistakes now on purpose just so you can fix them.
Sent 3 emails this morning to Ontario at 6 a.m. I was asleep. Scheduled them.
Had it scheduled ahead of time. Life is just better with the new update. Though you were telling me off camera,
Yeah,
this
there's
is
a
something.
catch.
This is a major
big
catch.
Yeah. So when you delete a text that you've sent, when you unsend it, so to speak, or when you edit a text, the other person can only see those features if they have updated to iOS 16 as
And
well.
most people, I don't think, update when they're supposed to,
Well,
do they?
It kind of tells you to do it, and then you're like, oh, I'll do
And then
it
you're
later.
going to put it on the back burner. And
So 6 months until we can be free of mistakes in our lives.
you know, every once in a while, this is a little bit different. This is more updating my my MacBook, and you know, sometimes we'll show my screen on screen on our YouTube. For those of you that most of you listen on the podcast, but if you watch us on YouTube, which we invite you to do, people could see from time to time the little red button, the little red note in the top right hand corner that would say update, and we'd start getting emails to the show from people that would be like, "Would you please update your laptop? Please update your computer." And it was kind of funny stuff. So yeah, this was always a reminder for me that real talkers don't miss much when I share my screen on camera. So this is I'll do my best to update. Do my best. Like, how lazy am I? I'll do my best. But if I update my iPhone too, then you and I can send each other texts and then pull them back all day long. Wouldn't that be exciting?
I specifically got them because the amount of mistakes I make texting you about everything is it's embarrassing.
Is it going to say, does it say to the recipient,
Yeah, you'll still
the
see
message
that I
was
edit-
withdrawn?
You can see underneath it says edited, much like on Facebook when you edit like a post or whatever or a comment. Yeah,
Because that always gets my
see
attention.
the edit history
On the apps where people can withdraw, like WhatsApp, for example, you can pull back a message and it'll say like John Hicks deleted that message. And then
got scared and thought again.
well, and then you're like, what did the message say?
And then you got to hit it.
It's like when you're texting back and forth with somebody and you see the 3 dancing dots. They're like typing, and then it stops. And then the dots start dancing again, typing, and you're waiting. And then
I
all of a
have
sudden
that
there's
with
just
you
no
all
text.
the time.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, what does he type? What is he? And then they go away. I'm like, oh, I guess he changed his mind.
Yeah. It was probably just me sharing another bad idea and then coming to my senses. We've got a great show in store. Coming up in less than 5 minutes, we're going to talk to Alex Gainer. He's an economist at the University of Alberta. Alex and I were chatting a couple of days ago, and I said, you know what we would love, and what I know that real talkers would love is just some common sense. Can we call it, I guess, just like ground level talk about what's going on with generally speaking, the economy, but interest rates, inflation. We hear it at the high levels. You know, the Bank of Canada bumping up 75 basis points to whatever. We go, okay, and we kind of know what that means for us. You go, your mortgage jumped up this amount, or your variable rate and your line of credit jumped up this much, or you're still figuring that out. But actually, what's going on? What's driving it? What should our, I guess not our prognosis be, but how do we process all of this over the next how many months? I don't know. You tell me. Alex will do his best to look into that crystal ball and make sense for us of the next 6 months or 12 or 18 or 24 or what have you. And this is relevant to people that are, trying to figure out the game plan. You say the average household, the costs are up by about $400 a month. Now, that's on average. Some people's costs aren't going to go up at all. If you don't have a mortgage, if you're, a little bit later in life, or you've done well for yourself, you made that a priority, maybe you got a little bit lucky, maybe it was a gift, who knows? All different circumstances, but you're not carrying a heavy debt load. So things like fluctuating rates or variable rates is for the most part irrelevant to you. And for another element of our listening audience and the general population, you're leveraged to the hilt. And I'm not making light of this. I'm being serious. You're stressed out to the max right now. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do, whether that means canceling a family vacation. We got an email from somebody a couple of days ago that said that they straight up canceled their family vacation. They hadn't told their kids about it yet, so it made it a little bit easier, but devastated. Maybe we'll share that email coming up in the next couple of days. But people are trying to figure out, this is not, the same person wrote into us and said the thing that's the real kick in the teeth is that they're not making any more of a payment against the principal on their mortgage. It's just going to increase interest rates. And a lot of people are trying to figure this out. And so Alex Gainer is going to get into that with us. And then a little bit later on in the show, about a half hour from now, Will Cardinal-Mawer is going to join us. Will is a force of nature. I met him, I guess, about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I've sort of had it in the back of my mind. And I was just like, I said, Will, real talkers need to hear from you. This guy is he's a street outreach worker with Bissell Center. That's an organization in our home city of Edmonton. And he's going to join us. And it's been a... Well, I don't want to speak for Will. It's been a tough pandemic for him and for his colleagues and for the people he serves. For the houseless population, it was International Overdose Awareness Day on October 31st, so about 2 weeks ago. And Will lost a friend to a drug poisoning within days of that. And a really moving post on his Instagram. We're going to get into that. His friend Jordan also, as a parallel story in talking about grief and loss. By the way, Jeremy Allen yesterday, how powerful was that segment? Unbelievable. We heard from a whole ton of you. In particular, Jeremy talking to kids about grief and loss. Will has been working out his own grief and loss, and I would imagine anger, following the murder of his uncle and cousin. You remember the story about the two hunters, the Métis hunters near Glendon, Alberta, Maurice Cardinal and Jacob Sansom? They were murdered in a roadside confrontation that police worked hard to solve. The assailants fled, were later captured, and one of them has been sentenced. The father has been sentenced. The son awaiting sentence in November. Will has been fighting for justice on his family's front there. So I'm expecting a really powerful conversation. We say real talk, we mean it. We're going to deliver that to you. And then a really great feature in this morning's edition of The Leading Edge. 40% of food around the world, globally, 40% of food is wasted. And there's a website and an app that's endeavoring to do something about that, to get food in front of people that need it, people on tight budgets that oftentimes are having to sacrifice the nutritional elements of what they're putting in front of themselves or their kids at the table. So this is a really neat story. Are you the same as me? Since it drives me absolutely it drives me absolutely nuts to waste food.
100%. We talked about this, how me and my wife, we make a choice to pick like the crappy looking onions, the weird looking shaped potatoes.
Yeah.
Because we know all that stuff, even though it's good, it's getting thrown out along with all that other stuff that is, people always say expired, but it's just best before, right? A lot of the food that gets thrown out, still good to eat, but it's just past that best before date. So I'm really excited about this Leading Edge today too, because it's taking all that food and putting it to good use. So.
It's a sick feeling. You like say you have, I don't know, chicken thighs in the freezer and you take them out. You're going to thaw them out. You put them in the fridge. You're going to make a meal that week. But then something happens, like you step out or friends, you go out for dinner the one night and then you kind of forget about it. You heat up leftovers the next night. You forget it. Long story short, all of a sudden the chicken goes bad. And the feeling of throwing out what was perfectly good food, it just drives me nuts. Right, you buy a loaf of bread. You're like, I'm going to make sandwiches this week. I'm not going to go out for lunch. I'm not going to, and then you find mold on the bread because you left it sitting there for 2 weeks. What about restaurants? What about supermarkets? I've done interviews with, I remember one in particular, this is several years ago, a guy that was I said, how do you want to be introduced on the radio? He goes, well, you could just tell everybody I'm a dumpster diver. I went, okay. And this guy had an Instagram account. I should track him down. We should get him on Real Talk. This guy's absolute, and he should be. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's just a different approach, right? Different things make different people tick. And this guy says, you wouldn't believe, and he's right. He goes, you wouldn't believe how much food supermarkets throw out because they have to. They're mandated to. Supermarkets can't take the position of, it's not an expiry. It's only a best before, right?
I know.
But if you look at it, I'm trying to figure out if I want to tell you something really gnarly.
I get it. It only takes one
I won't get
person.
into the details, but there are some dairy products, and this is not my official advice to our audience. Do not take this as advice, but just anecdotally, like some dairy products like yogurt as an example. It's kind of a classic example where the best before date, you've still got I mean, people aren't going to want me to put this on the record.
Is not.
We do have adequate insurance, I believe, on this show.
Disclaimer on the
But
screen.
honestly, you've got probably 2 months of runway. I wish people could see your face right now. But really, if yogurt yogurt is what people fear it could become, how do you think yogurt becomes yogurt?
I've heard this discussion, and like cheese is mold and blah blah blah, but it's I don't know.
I know it sounds a little gnarly.
I'm not a food scientist, but I don't think.
So I'm talking to this guy, and he goes, "You wouldn't believe what supermarkets would throw out."
Oh,
it's like the meat and the produce and all this. And most people aren't going to go jump into a dumpster to feed their family. Some people do. I'm not denigrating it. I'm certainly not mocking it. And this guy's sense of conviction, he couldn't stand to see the food waste. And I can relate to that 100%. And I know a lot of people can. So I'm looking forward to telling you about this. That's coming up on the Leading Edge. It's presented every Tuesday here on the show by Leading Edge Physiotherapy. We mentioned these iPhones, and we're obviously having some fun with this update. For once in my life, I'm actually excited about a software upgrade, John. This isn't typically the type of thing that gets me going.
I saw it. I was like, this is a Jespo update here.
We haven't even talked about what you can do lifting the subjects out of your photos. How cool is that? Maybe another conversation for another day. But right now, our friends at Westworld Computers want to let you know that they are overstocked when it comes to some of the Mac products that everybody wants to get their hands on, including the MacBook Pros, love those, and the M1 MacBook Airs as well. So they've got a sale going on. They've had that through the month. I drove past Westworld yesterday on the West End. Still the big sign up. You can talk to them about upgrading your MacBook, your Air, your Pro, what have you. Of course, you can shop their selection online as well at westworld.ca. And don't forget, with regards to these new iPhones, they've been taking pre-orders on them since September 9th. So a few days ago, they're available for delivery a few days from now. They're expecting them to be available September 16th. So do not delay. Westworld is the place to get new products. You can shop them in person or online at westworld.ca. Our friends at Eden Landscaping want to remind you that, your outdoor space, it has so much potential. You're looking out right now and you feel almost, do you a bit of resentment when you look at your back or front yard? It's just boring you stiff. You don't want to have people over because what is it? Just a bunch of sod that looks brutal if you have dogs anyway. I'm describing my backyard. And that one tree that's just far from impressive. Well, why not check in with Mike and his team and bring that space to life? Not just increasing your property value, but your quality of life at your home digs. Check out their portfolio, their services. Now's a great time to plant the seed with Eden so they can hit the ground running in spring. Referrals and return business are proof that this company has satisfied customers all the way through. Or, of course, you could just leave the landscaping to somebody else at your brand new $2.2 million dream home. Life-changing luxury. That's a big part of the Covenant Foundation lottery offerings this year in support of the Grey Nuns and Misericordia hospitals. You can get your tickets today at covenantfoundationlottery.ca. Your shot at a 5,400 square foot, 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom, fully furnished dream home. Absolutely stunning stuff. But of course, there's also the gorgeous getaways, the luxury vehicles, and a whole lot more. The 50/50 too, the current pot more than $500,000. This is the 30th anniversary edition of the Covenant Foundation Lottery. Get your tickets at covenantfoundationlottery.ca or give them a call at 1-888-944-2774. I've been meaning to ask if you can win that dream home, if you're eligible to win. I think we might be able to get off on a technicality on the small print.
My wife is very upset to learn that. Beautiful home, 2
Brutal.
blocks from where we currently reside.
Oh, boy. Can you imagine that?
Unattainable.
How easy would the move be? You just borrow someone's little Red Ryder wagon.
We're leaving everything. Donating. Have you seen? We looked in the windows of this place. It's like the video doesn't do it justice.
Is that right?
It's just immaculate. It's designed perfectly. We wouldn't change a thing. We just walk in that day and suitcase and that's it.
Wouldn't that be great? You just put your other place up on Kijiji and you're like free to a good home.
Yeah.
A home.
Who needs
Here
a
you
couch?
go.
Who needs
there you
this?
go.
Who needs that?
Huh. I guess in a way, this is kind of a great segue into what we're going to be talking about now. I mean, people dreaming of upgrading their housing for a lot of Canadians, it feels like a pipe dream now, not just that housing costs are rising, but borrowing costs as well. Mortgages are going to cost you, 30, 40, maybe 50% more now than they would have even a few months ago. We're going to talk to economist Alex Gainer in just a second. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, in rolling out an affordable housing initiative just a couple of days ago, had this to say about his government's approach to housing, interest rates, employment, and, of course, Canada's economy.
When nearly a third of Canadians rent their homes, it's important that governments make sure renters are part of any affordability plan. And that's what the federal government will keep doing. When people have a home of their own, whether they rent or they own, they're better able to invest in themselves and invest in their communities. Our government understands that it's only by investing in people that we can grow the economy. When we help provide childcare, we give kids the best start in life and help 250,000 workers, especially moms, participate in the labor force.
Alex Gainer is an economist at the University of Alberta. His teaching and research involves micro and macroeconomic topics like housing, inflation, labor data, monetary policy. Before working at the U of A, Alex was an economist with the Treasury Board and finance at the Alberta government, making his Real Talk debut. It's nice to have you on the show. Thanks for making time for us.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
You bet. I'm looking forward. I've promised the audience that you and I are going to basically talk about the economy at a level that I and a lot of them can understand. Just the real life, real conversations, not the high level stuff that oftentimes we see reported in the news media. The landscape right now with regards to people's cost of living and all of those spin-off storylines, pretty significant stuff right now.
Yeah. You kind of told me I was supposed to just talk about yogurt, but
yeah.
I guess I'll...
Do you want to get into expiry dates? We could probably find some metaphor for the economy there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to hating food waste, though, and
oh man,
yeah, arguing with my wife.
Yeah,
if it smells fine, just it should be safe.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. I agree. Although we're going to hear from probably some sort of scientist or lab researcher that's going to say this is extremely dangerous conversation, which you should not be having. And they would also be right about that. So maybe we'll encourage people to adhere to these dates. But hey, you know what? I mean, I guess, hey, can I be cheesy here and say the expiry date on affordable mortgages appears to be passed? I mean, I got burned on this one. It's nobody's fault but me. It's my fault. I should have renewed our mortgage back in June, but I didn't. I waited until 2 weeks ago. It's costing us, and I know it's costing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Canadians. From your perspective of understanding all of this, how are you processing what you're seeing with these interest rates climbing so high?
Yeah, so it really is unprecedented. Bank of Canada's raising interest rates the quickest pace since the mid-1990s. So you're definitely going to feel this on your mortgages. I'm also someone that got burned. I've been a fan of variable rate mortgages for... since I've owned a house, and I'm getting burned as well. But it's definitely, people are going to be feeling it, especially maybe it's not front of mind right now, but when they go to renew their mortgage in 1, 2, 3, 4 years, it's probably going to be a big shock. And another one that's not getting much attention is I was reading an article saying most variable rate mortgages are actually based on fixed payments. So a lot of people with variable rate mortgages probably haven't seen their payments go up yet because they haven't hit their trigger rate. But maybe that happened last week with last week's interest rate, but it'll likely happen with this next one. So even people with variable interest rate mortgages, and they might be thinking, I hear about rates going up, but the money coming on my bank account hasn't changed, but there's a good chance that'll change with the next Bank of Canada announcement.
They say misery loves company. I don't know why, but it makes me feel a little bit better that I'm getting burned, that an economist at the U of A is also getting burned. Is that okay with you, that I feel that way? Yeah. Misery does love company. You said that, you allude to sort of as time passes or people will figure this out down the line. And for a lot of folks, us included, you're trying to make sense. And I feel like these are high stakes decisions with very minimal understanding on my part, for sure. And so you look at the rate that the bank or the lender's offering, and I recognize we're talking specifically mortgages right now, but you could talk about how people are navigating these rises in housing costs or costs of living, across the board. Does it make sense to lock into a 1 year deal right now, a 2-year mortgage, a 5-year mortgage, because people are really trying to figure out, is what's happening right now a short-term thing? You know, the Bank of Canada trying to tap down inflation a little bit, or is this the new normal? I mean, does it make sense to lock in for 5 years? Because 5 years from now, mortgages could be 9%.
Yeah, so that's a tough one. So Bank of Canada's at 3.25%. Most forecasts say it's going to go up again at their next meeting. So likely go up again, and it'll probably stay high. Maybe Bank of Canada's interest rate around 4% by the end of this year and probably most of next year. So probably high. Most forecasts, most economists would confidently say interest rates are going to be what they are now, maybe a bit higher by the end of this year and through 2023. It may start dropping. They may start dropping end of 2023 or 2024. But right now, there's just so much uncertainty. It's tough to say, but it's going to be higher interest rates are here for at least the next year or two. That being said, it's in terms of mortgages, that's pretty complex. I would definitely recommend talking to a mortgage broker, to your lender to see, is it in my best interest to exit my current variable rate or whatever interest mortgage you have and sign a new one. But I would say interest rates are going to be elevated for at least the next year. Yeah,
I should take you off the hook after putting you on the hook and remind people that you're not here to advise them on their mortgages, but to help us understand what's going on. And I find I almost catch myself, Alex, when I talk to you and I say, what do we do? People trying to make sense of this with interest rates so high. And you're like, yeah, it's 3.25% right now. And then, of course, the bank's lending rates will be a little bit higher than that. But we hear from people all the time, and they're absolutely right. People aren't wrong when they say, our first mortgage in the 80s was like 18% or like 21%, which is mind-boggling. I was talking to a guy the other day. It's like buying a house on a credit card. What was, like in layperson's terms, what was the difference in the economic landscape, or what was going on, or how the Bank of Canada was managing it or intervening, if you want to say, in those times, in the 80s versus now, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. So kind of 1970s, there's much, much higher inflation, even relative, we're in double-digit inflations, and the Bank of Canada was run a bit different in those days. All central banks were. They weren't as independent. So prime ministers, presidents had more influence on them. So 1970s, inflation was much higher and was more entrenched in society. People believed inflation was permanently higher. So, shops, businesses just kind of automatically raised prices year after year, and wages kept going up because people really thought high inflation is here to stay. And the Bank of Canada, central banks had less credibility in those days. People didn't believe they're really that serious about bringing down inflation. So they really had to jack up interest rates a significant amount to prove, hey, we've changed how we approach the economy. We're legitimate now. We're really trying to bring interest rates down now. And that's kind of what they're doing right now. The Bank of Canada's it's been more aggressive than our peer countries, the US, UK, Australia. They've actually increased interest rates quicker and by large amounts than any other central bank. And a big reason is they're trying to maintain that credibility that, hey, we're very, very serious about getting inflation down, to not have a repeat of those 1980s where they have to push up interest rates extremely high to buy credibility.
Well, can we safely say that if interest rates were to be anywhere near where they were in the 80s, or even half of where they were in the 80s, that we would see insolvencies and foreclosures, and that it would be an absolute disaster?
Definitely. Yeah, even close to half if we saw mortgage rates up at 10%. And thanks for showing that graphic there to refresh our memory. Yeah, if interest rates go up to 10%, that would definitely push Canada into recession. We'd see a lot of businesses go bankrupt or shut down. So the Bank of Canada is really trying to avoid that. What they're doing right now is kind of front-loading interest rate hikes, pushing up as quickly as possible by large amounts in hopes that they won't have to raise it even more in the future.
Johnny, you want to throw that graphic up again? Because I think this is worth, let's describe it, Alex, for the people that are listening to the podcast, because I know there's value in this one. This is, basically sort of a bit of a perspective check, isn't it? That reminds us of what cost of borrowing has been and what interest rates have looked like for people. And when you're talking about, and I recognize housing costs were obviously lower then too, but it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you're talking about people now that, the average single detached in Canada, depending on the market, is, 350 to, I mean, if you're talking Vancouver, Toronto, 1.5 million. I mean, an interest rate, now we're looking at, 3 and a bit percent. When you're looking at in the late 1970s,
Or
early 1980s.
I would say, I think that's probably, things have changed so much. So that's probably 6 months old. So I think it'd probably be, I think it's about 4.5%, 5% now.
4.5, 5. But you're looking at 21.5%. In the late 70s to the early 80s, when you're talking about present day $500,000, I mean, people are just handing in the keys, right?
Yeah, that would, there would be mass bankruptcy. I don't think, for a lot of practical reasons, they could push interest rates that high.
Okay, let me ask you this, because you mentioned other countries, and I'm really curious for your assessment on that. Canada's Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland did stack up Canada. She invites those comparisons. We played this audio last week, but I think it's worth replaying this. This was, I think, September 7th. She said this, so about a week ago-ish. This is Federal Finance Minister Freeland.
This is a challenging global environment economically. We are still dealing with the aftershocks of the COVID recession. We now have Putin's invasion of Ukraine causing huge challenges for the global economy, principally Europe, but that has an impact on all of us. And Canada is not immune to these challenges. What Canada has, though, going into these challenges is really strong economic fundamentals. We have this year the strongest growth in the G7. We have this year lowest debt and deficit in the G7. And inflation is elevated in Canada, but compared to our peer countries, it's lower. Inflation in Canada is lower than in the UK, in the US, in Germany, in the Eurozone. And I think all of us were pleased to see the July number receding a little bit from the June number. So I don't want to understate the challenge ahead, but I do want us, as we go into it, to also, as a country, have the confidence that comes from the strength of our foundations.
Okay, so two things can be true at the same time. Numbers don't lie, and politicians going to politic. So what should people take from that? Where is she bang on, and where is there maybe a little bit of politicking happening?
Yeah, so she bang on. I think most economists would say, the higher prices, higher inflation, it's largely due to energy prices, food prices, which are set globally, and they've recently really been influenced by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So Russia's invasion of Ukraine has really pushed up the price of oil, natural gas, and food prices as well. To grow most food, you need oil and you need things like natural gas to make those fertilizer. So a lot of input prices to food have gone up. Yeah. And Ukraine and Russia produce a lot of wheat. So probably majority of what's causing inflation right now is probably outside of our borders, food and energy. So that's true. But where she's probably politicking is, there is some blame to the Canadian government. They did kind of juice the economy more with the benefit of hindsight, I guess. They did juice the economy more than they probably should have. Back in 2020, 2021, they're really worried about recession, I guess. But the amount of spending federal government did was higher than normal. So some blame needs to be laid there. But most of the growth inflation is likely due to global factors, specifically high energy prices, high fuel prices.
I appreciate that assessment. I don't have to tell you or this audience that the new Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, with his just inflation talking point, Charles Adler and I got into this yesterday, certainly honing in on that, on government spending through the pandemic. It's a delicate talking point. He's got to be careful about how he does it. Otherwise, he'll be criticized of having a cold heart, a guy that would have essentially forced a lot of Canadians, as Adler said yesterday, to take a cold bath. An interesting story published in the Globe and Mail just this morning, Alex. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's estimated that Ottawa could lose more than $5 billion in those emergency pandemic loans to small businesses. There were about $50 billion in total, $49 billion in emergency loans extended to small business during the pandemic lockdowns. And the task of chasing down these business owners to collect on that is proving to be a difficult one for the Canada Revenue Agency. Of course, now in hindsight, it's easy to look back on that, but certainly we're looking for a fulsome understanding of what's driving a lot of this, and so we appreciate your perspective there. People want to know, how to ride this out, the best way to ride this out. Like, people say it's cool for us to talk about global markets and macroeconomics, but at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out, people are going to say, if we can take our kids to the Kananaskis or to Jasper for Christmas, we're trying to figure out if we can afford it. We're trying to figure out if we can keep our second vehicle or if we need to sell it. So what are you looking at, even as you and your family make your plans over the next 6 or 12 or 24 or 36 months? What are you paying attention to?
Yeah, so I would say for most mortgages are fixed in Canada, so most people haven't had that hit yet, but just to kind of look at the calendar and think, okay, when do we have to renew our mortgage? And just look online, look at what average interest rates are, and kind of budget for that, or maybe a bit higher. So realize that, next time you renew your mortgage, you're likely going to be paying quite a bit more. So a lot more of your budget's going to be going to that. Another thing I would emphasize, so we talk inflation in Canada is about 8% to 7.6% in July. And so we talk about how that, the forecasts are that should come down to about 5% next year, 2023, and then hopefully return to normal, which is 2-3% by 2024. But when people hear that, I think they think, okay, right now I used to pay $400 in groceries a month. Now I'm paying $450. So when inflation comes back down to 2%, I'll pay $400 for groceries again. But, inflation, it's the percentage increase in prices. So essentially prices are permanently higher. We're just saying they're growing at a slower rate. Instead of growing really quick a year, 8% a year, they're growing 2% a year. So key thing, keep in mind is prices on average are permanently higher.
Yeah,
Don't expect grocery prices, utility prices, things like that to come down.
Yeah. When's the last that you don't typically see price? I mean, I guess I may be thinking of gasoline in a way, but even still, I was going to say prices don't typically return to earth. But it's funny. I'm mentally conditioned now to think of when gas goes back down to $1.39 a liter. I'm like, oh, sweet, fill up. I mean, I know I'm old, but I'm not too old to remember. When I started driving, I think gas was 43 cents a liter. I mean, it's tripled in 20 years, that sort of idea, 30 years, I guess, if I'm being honest. Prices don't typically drop back down, do they? Even if inflation slows, this is the new reality.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, we really try to avoid deflation. So that's prices falling. And inflation is average prices. So there are some prices, like you mentioned, gasoline it's fallen to $1.39. It'll probably keep falling, but prices in general, or prices on average, are permanently higher now. They'll probably keep going up a bit. And right now we're seeing it mostly in food and energy prices, but the way it happens, that usually kind of bleeds into services, especially workers. Inflation's high, so a lot of workers are understandably going to ask for higher wages. And that's going to kind of keep inflation fairly high because businesses give those wages, so they have to raise prices a bit to cover those higher wages. So it'll take a while for inflation to cool off.
I'd be curious to know how that'll go for people. And I do encourage people to try to maximize their remuneration, their compensation at work, and that type of thing. You also got to be able to read the room. I look at what's happened with a lot of the public sector, the collective bargaining and things that we've seen. And I mean, if you manage to get a percent bump up, or if 2%, geez, that's a big win these days. It feels like you're not even keeping up with inflation. But with regards to where the economy's at right now, and a lot of these businesses, I mean, we just talked about that $5 billion the feds are probably not going to get back. How businesses have just been battered and bruised, many of them, if not most, through the pandemic. I'd be curious to know how it'll go for people that are looking for raises these days. It's a tough ask in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be, the Bank of Canada is watching that closely. It's going to be tough to predict, but there actually is quite a big labor shortage in quite a few industries. So and wages are a lot higher. I think we just had data from August. I think wages went up 5.2% on average or something, the hourly wage. So they're definitely going up quicker than normal. And the unemployment rate went up a little bit, but it's still really low at about 5%. I think it's 5.1%. And so I think, 5.4% now. So I think wages will be going up. It really depends on where you work and who you work for ultimately, but there are labor shortages everywhere. But yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. In closing,
I was saying closing, and then I realized immediately it's a mistake, because what if you take us down this path that prompts 10 more questions? But, there's this irony in a sense, isn't there, that high commodity prices, in particular energy prices, and relatively high resource revenues mean that our home province, the province of Alberta, is looking at a surplus now. They were anticipating a surplus of $500 million, which a government would love to trot out. Any surplus is good. It's now $13 billion they're looking at, right, Alex? And so the provincial government here, for the most part, acknowledging that's due to where resource revenues are at right now. So costs are higher for people, including at the pump on a personal level, but it's really good for the bottom line of the province, right? It's better for the provincial economy. So there's this kind of trade-off in a sense. As best you can, and I know you'll probably go, when I ask you to do this, but looking ahead, where do you expect the price of oil to stay? What about natural gas? What are the implications on provincial and federal coffers and on people? What are you seeing around you in that macro sense that allows you to maybe provide us with a bit of analysis?
Yeah, so maybe to that first point, we, as bad as things are in Alberta, we're kind of lucky. So the two things, like I mentioned, driving inflation are high oil prices and high food prices, specifically wheat. And we're pretty lucky in Alberta that those are two things we produce a lot of. We export. So that'll soften the blow for us. Help out a lot of the farmers and any businesses involved with oil. And now our government has a lot more revenue, so they can maybe use that to increase affordability. But yeah, for next, in terms of the price of oil, I mean, markets are expecting oil just to slowly fall. I think to settle around $60 in the next couple of years. And natural gas prices similarly should slowly fall. So we'll likely see the Alberta economy and Canadian economy cool as a result. But in general, looking forward, the forecasts are saying inflation, it was 8.1%, July was 7.6%. We actually got US inflation this morning. It came down a bit to 8.3%. So that's encouraging, indicating like global pressures on prices are falling. But I would expect inflation to fall a bit next year to maybe 5-6%. And then hopefully by 2024 fall to around 2%. But remember, prices are permanently higher. Yeah. And interest rates are likely going to stay where they're at. Maybe they'll likely go up a little bit more. So most mortgages will be between 5 and 6%. And it's a good chance that they'll stay there for most of next year. Hopefully they come down a bit, but that's going to have a big impact on mortgage costs. And another one, and I thought of it when he showed the Prime Minister's clip, was rent. So I think that's kind of preemptive. A lot of analysts are saying rent prices are really going to start to go up. They kind of lag mortgage costs, but rent prices are likely going to really start increasing this year and next year. And services in general, services and rent prices are lagging indicators. So they're likely going to keep on going up for the next 6-12 months.
I'm going to be honest, man. My chest gets tight when I hear a conversation like this because it's stressful for everybody, right? It's stressful for, in many circumstances, the landlords or the property owners. It's stressful certainly for the renters. We put ourselves in the position of we try to walk a mile in the shoes of people that are trying to qualify for home ownership. I mean, that's who the Prime Minister is talking about. That's whose attention he's trying to get with this incentive, right? But there's people that have been dutifully putting money away and saving for that down payment that just all of a sudden saw opportunity for all intents and purposes evaporate. And it's a sick feeling, right? I mean, it's just, this is real life stuff.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate. It's going to be probably another tough year or two. And like you said, it's going to be tougher, especially for lower income families or more vulnerable groups.
Alex Gainer, an economist at the University of Alberta. You delivered. We asked you to make this accessible and understandable to lay people like us, and you did. Thanks for making time for us.
Thanks. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it, Alex. Thanks so much. On the live chat, like you're all telling your real stories. This is real life stuff. This is why we want to have these conversations. Justin says we've been building a home for the past 10 months or so, and the rate hikes have cost us so much in interest alone, it's almost made it unaffordable. That's Justin's home in construction as we speak, under construction. Maggie is chiming in, says my first mortgage was 18% in the 1980s. She says it's incredible, actually, that we bought at that rate. People are talking about student loans right? Lauren says, we got lucky in the 80s. We only paid 14.75, just under 15%. He was getting lucky on his mortgage. Marie says, yeah, Marie remembers people walking away from their homes in the 1980s. Tracy paid off her $13,000 in student loans over 7 years at an interest rate between 17 and 19.5%. Man, and Randy says, my folks couldn't afford their mortgage in the late 70s. We lost our home. We moved to the trap line full time. Wow. That from Randy. I sure appreciate when you share with us how these stories, like, you know, and I like that Alex is able to take the big storylines, the international market stuff, the global prompts to inflation. And I also appreciated, John, that he didn't shy away from, when you ask, typically you'll ask an economist or other professionals, you'll say, where's the politicking here? And they'll typically say, well, we don't really want to get into the politics. We don't really want to talk politics. But he answered the question. I appreciated that, you know? And, hey, this is what we endeavor to bring you every single day, is insights into the big stories, but how they relate to you personally. When we check in with Will Cardinal-Mawer next, I guarantee that he's going to have something to say about cost of living for societies more marginalized. He works with people, unhoused populations, full time. That's his calling. That's his life's work. And these are people in many circumstances. You talk about when cost of living, when something increases, like we're talking in the hundreds of dollars every month. For a lot of people, let us not forget that an increase in costs of $20 or $50 or $100 a month is major. And we always want to make sure that we're having those conversations and holding space for them in meaningful senses. If you're an engineer in Canada right now, but you're feeling unfulfilled where you're at, maybe you're underappreciated, maybe you're just not challenged, quite frankly, Apex Automation wants to talk to you. You can check out apexautomation.ca today. The careers link is where you can explore their open positions and learn a little bit more about what they're doing when it comes to projects, the engineering, the fabrication, the automation. Take a look right now at apexautomation.ca. Your next career move could be today with Apex Automation. Our friends at Kubi Energy want to remind you that the federal government right now, we're talking about incentives, we're talking about loans. How does $40,000 interest-free sound to get solar panels up on your roof? More and more people are looking to pursue their sustainable energy goals in their homes, their businesses, their farms, their commercial properties, because it's more reliable and more affordable now than ever before. Kubi does all the paperwork for you. You don't have to worry about that, digging into the details, getting into the weeds. You can get your free quote today on solar from Kubi Energy at kubienergy.ca. At Local Environmental Services, their priority, their core value is keeping it local. This is a family-owned business that's been around for more than a quarter century in Alberta and Saskatchewan, providing water hauling, fencing, vacuum truck, landfill, portable toilet services, you name it. Local Environmental Services can deliver. Check them out today at localenvironmental.ca. Oh, and by the way, if you have something you need to get off your chest, you want it included for consideration for Trash Talk, coming up on Friday, one of our best segments of the week, if you ask me, presented by Local Environmental. Send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And I checked in yesterday with our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Absolutely love those guys. The Cardinals, the Liebers, the family-owned Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Check them out today for the fall special pumpkin pie blizzard treat. And don't forget that Score Caramel Brownie Cupfection. And if you're a big Blizzard fan, explore the new DQ app. You can join the Blizzard fan club, and there's all kinds of benefits. Again, when you're at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. Thanks for showing our sponsors some love. We wouldn't be able to do this show without them. Well, I tell you, from time to time, I'll meet somebody in real life. I'll meet somebody in person, and within moments, I'll know that you need to know them too. And that's the story of our next guest. Will Cardinal-Mawer is a Métis Cree from Wolf Lake, Alberta. He works at the Bissell Center as a street outreach worker. He's worked with Edmonton's houseless community for more than a decade. Will making his Real Talk debut this morning. My friend, it's great to see you. Thanks for making time for us.
Hello, Ryan. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show. Is my audio coming through okay?
Yeah, you sound crystal clear.
Okay.
You sound great.
Perfect. Cool.
Will, it was International Overdose Awareness Day a couple of weeks ago on August 31st, and we've had plenty of conversations on this show about safe supply and harm reduction and supervised consumption. We've talked to some people across this country that this is their calling. To literally save lives. You know that thousands of Canadians, thousands, are dying every year from drug poisoning. For you, this is personal. Oftentimes, the people that you're working with in your line of work are people you've gotten to know, your personal friends. Where was your head at on International Overdose Awareness Day?
International Overdose Awareness Day. Is a really important day for myself. Doing outreach, I respond to quite a number of overdoses down on the street. In the year and 3 months that I've been doing outreach, I personally responded to just over 150 myself.
Wow.
And that's just within like a 20-block radius of downtown, like the Boyle-Macaulay neighborhood. And see something happened. Can you still see me?
Yeah, we can see you. You're all good, man. Can I ask you about your Instagram post? This is what caught my attention. Because you and I have spoken in past several times. I want to let people know one of the first things I noticed about you is you carry a naloxone kit actually on your belt buckle, which to me was both practical if you need it, but also I think as someone who can have an influence in society, it sends a very clear message. It's a great reminder for people that more and more citizens are kind of being tapped on the shoulder here. But you shared your Instagram account, The Wolves Are Calling, and I encourage people to give you a follow there, about your friend Jordan. Would you tell us about Jordan?
Yeah. Jordan was a very special person to the inner city. I'd met him around 6 years ago working at a youth shelter, and I've known him ever since. And he was a very sweet, loving, caring individual. He passed away September 4th, 2021, via drug poisoning. And it was a big loss for the community and the people who knew him.
I think for a lot of folks, faces and stories matter, because we see statistics of people that have died from drug poisoning, and for whatever reason, maybe it's the same with COVID. I don't know. Maybe it was the same back in the day with HIV and AIDS or with other things where society just sort of looked at numbers, and we failed to consider that these were people, that these were human beings with value. Yeah. How do you approach your work as an outreach worker? Because you really are. You're not just there working for people or with people. You're also a very strong advocate. You're telling people's stories.
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just how do you approach your work with regards to being an advocate for people? The power of storytelling, I think, is so important in mobilizing greater society, to really pay serious attention to some of these issues.
Yeah. I guess I approach my work with I just kind of know how important this the work I do is, and I know how dire straits it is out there for folks. It's life and death and every day, and so I just realized the importance of that message, and I have a platform on my social media and then just with interacting with people in real life, just try my best to share those stories because somebody has to.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat your Instagram account a million times while we talk, so people give you a follow at The Wolves Are Calling.
You.
Well, this is it's like almost a grounding stone in a way, or it's a place where I know that people go. I read the comments on your photos, Will, and you're doing amazing work helping people understand the real life impacts of a lot of the stories we talk about. I mean, I just had a conversation with an economist, right? And we're talking about inflation and interest rates and what it's doing for housing affordability. and all these types of things.
Right.
And we talk about people, what's the best move to make when you're renewing your mortgage, or what's the the best financial decision to make for your family, and I think that so many times, I don't want to say we ignore, but we overlook really important and valid segments of our society, our fellow human beings, and how things like out of control inflation is impacting people. With regards to cost of living, what are you seeing at the Bissell Center and elsewhere?
We're seeing Edmonton's houseless population is the largest it's been in its history currently right now. And we're seeing like every day new individuals at the Bissell Center, brand new to homelessness. We're living check to check through the pandemic, and just ended up on the streets. In reality, nobody's safe. It could happen to anybody. I've met doctors, I've met lawyers, people who had very secure jobs, and then in an instant, they can lose it all. And so, we're seeing a massive increase right now, and it's not getting better. It's not getting better.
So what's your message to people that are maybe insulated from the harsh reality of what real life looks like for a lot of these people right now? I mean, what would you like people to hear about, or what would you like people to know? If you could blast your message out, what would you say?
I would say Edmonton's houseless community is honestly one of the greatest communities you could ever honestly interact with. They are some of the most amazing people you could ever meet in your entire life. And it makes me so sad to see the comments online about how unsafe people feel downtown and on the transit system. Yes, people are currently very unwell, but in the end, they're just people. And if you treat them as such, you give respect. Respect is returned, and even just look them in the eye and say hello. So I see so many times people just walk by and avoid eye contact, and even if you don't have change to give them, still just validate their existence, right? They just want to be seen, and I'm thankful in my outreach job to be able to walk those streets every day and check in on them and ask how they're doing. And they're just it's just a real special community. And I feel they have a really bad and unfair rapport. I have a bad day, I get to come home, I get to play video games, I get to watch a movie, I get to relax. They have a bad day, there's no outlets for them. They're gonna break a window, they're gonna scream in a bus stop, and these are all just what's the word I'm looking for? Just
outlets.
Yeah, it's just it's all based on the trauma they've all experienced, and it's the same with addiction and stuff. I could go into that a lot. Also.
Well, yeah, let me ask you about that, because I mean we're coming up on National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's just over 2 weeks from now, on September 30th, and the last couple of years, in particular, the last year, I think for Canadians has been a huge. I don't know if I say a wake-up call, a reminder, a reckoning of the legacy of residential schools and how they destroyed or attempted to destroy Indigenous culture and identity over the course of decades. Have you seen an impact, in a positive sense at all, in the general public's attitude toward marginalized population, including Indigenous people in Canada, as a result of that reminder or that awakening? Do you see some positive developments there on that front as people look within their own lives and say, how can I offer an act of reconciliation, or how can I do something about what I'm feeling about Canada's history? Have you seen it at all?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I would say in the past 2 years, I've seen like an increase in. I guess Indigenous people are a lot more visible now. It's funny, we're still one of the most invisible people groups in the entire country, but we've made steps in like forward in being more visible, including like Orange Shirt Day. We've seen an increase. I've seen an increase in like events, vigils, like even just Orange Shirt Day itself, even like National Indigenous Peoples Day. A lot more people have been showing up. Obviously not as many as we would like, but like it's baby steps. I feel like we're on our way. We're nowhere close to where we need to be with that, but I've definitely seen an increase of support and advocacy, from like majority culture.
We're talking to Will Cardinal-Mawer. If you're just joining us, live streaming audio on the Mixler audio app. I hope it's okay if I ask you about your uncle and your cousin, Will. This is pretty much the beginning of COVID, right? This was March 27th of 2020 near Glendon, Alberta. Your uncle, Maurice Cardinal, your cousin, Jacob Sansom, were gunned down in a roadside confrontation. They'd been out hunting together. Convicted in those deaths, father and son, Roger and Anthony Bilodeau. Roger sentenced to 10 years in prison, less time served for manslaughter, and Anthony will be sentenced for second-degree murder and manslaughter in November. This has been a horrific, obviously, journey for your family. And I know that you've been certainly doing what you can to keep this in front of the public. What's the most important message now, 2.5 years following those deaths? Do you feel, every bereaved family that's had someone stolen like this is never going to feel like justice, I would imagine, has truly been served. But what's your response to the 10-year sentence? And where are you at now? Where's your family at now with that?
The 10-year sentence was not ideal, obviously. He's only he'll get out in around 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's of course we would wish it was longer. And our family closure isn't, I guess Anthony still has to be sentenced in November. And so I guess true closure wouldn't happen until after that. Our family is really struggling right now. Currently, there's been a lot of their people still support them, and the men who did this, and in their family. And so there's been online, on Facebook and stuff, there's been a lot of bad things said about my cousin and my uncle, and people continue to slander them. And people continue to talk bad about them. And even in our own Facebook groups and stuff, folks will infiltrate. And so it's just been, we can't really grieve and heal when that stuff is ongoing, and of course people will say don't engage with it, with anything Indigenous, the comments are always going to be awful, and with Indigenous issues, and people will say to Indigenous people, don't read them. And of course, I know I would be better off not, but to not read them and to not engage and to not to defend, it's almost like a privilege, someone needs to hold these folks like that accountable, I think. And they get really bold online, and so to engage with them, it's to show them that, hey, not everybody agrees with your awful views,
Would you tell us about your family members? Would you tell us about Maurice and Jacob? Would you tell us the truth about who they were and how you remember them and the impact they made on your life?
Yeah. I wasn't close with them the last 10 years, but growing up, they were very, very, very special people to me and to my family. Like my uncle Maurice, my mom, my mom and him, they were close growing up, and she always called him Mopstick because he was really thin, and he had, growing up, he had really curly hair, still did. And Uncle Mopstick, that's what I knew him as. Like, I didn't even know his name was Mo until until I was like older. And then my cousin Jacob was just that he was like so gentle, like a very gentle man, very kind, but also like he stood up for things. He stood up for people. He stood up against bullies. He protected people. Like he protected his siblings growing up in Bonnyville. There's again, in a lot of rural communities, there's a lot of anti-Indigenous racism, and it used to be a lot worse. I don't know, maybe not. Like, I don't think anything's changed, but
yeah, I don't know. Like real talk. Like, has anything changed? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, no. You say, I mean, you as an Indigenous man, or me as a white man, I think still we can both look at comments around stories like this. Your family members gunned down, or I think of the Colton Boushie situation in Saskatchewan, and there have been others. And the comments to me, for every moment where I'll look around, and again, from my privileged position, but I'll look around and see, hey, maybe this nation's kind of waking up, or maybe we're having finally meaningful conversations, or the Pope shows up to apologize, or James Smith Cree Nation is mourning a horrific tragedy in Saskatchewan, and a nation mourns. And then you read the comments on a story and you go, it just feels like it sets any of that progress back like a generation. Yeah. And I try not to get too pessimistic about it or too discouraged about it. What about you?
I think when I see stuff like that, and I know there's a lot of people out there that think those things, very like violent things towards Indigenous people. I guess on one hand, like to the degree, like, are you familiar with like shoot, shovel, shut up?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I saw that. I mean, of course, Ralph Klein made it famous, talking about BSE and the cattle ranchers.
Mad Cow.
But I saw that TikTok video. I don't have it here locked and loaded, or we'd show folks. But that you're talking about the grain farmer in Saskatchewan on TikTok.
Yeah. Or it's more so. No, I just remember when Colton Boushie was murdered. All of a sudden in the comments, you just started seeing like SSS. And like, if you weren't familiar with the term or the acronym, like you wouldn't think anything of it. Right. But it was like rural property owners used to apply that to cows. And then all of a sudden now they apply it to trespassers or criminals, or whoever they deem, whoever they deem that. And it's like, they're just literally talking about like shooting people and burying them.
It's called murder. Yeah, it's called murder is what it is. There was a I don't know if you saw it. There was a TikTok video posted, I think it was like a week ago or something. John, did you see? You know the one I'm talking about? There was like, it was a farmer, it was a grain farmer, and he was like standing in front of his silo, and like he posted it from his account with his name on it. Like, wasn't hiding it. It wasn't in some private conversation. And he basically was just spewing this anger and advocating for murder. And I couldn't. And again, I know we keep saying the comments, but the comments were like, yeah, brother, like, yeah, you tell him. Yeah, I'm just going, what is going on?
They're bold. They're emboldened. They're like, it's wild. Like, if that's how public they are online about it from their own accounts, think about them in real life, and it's something. Something needs to happen. It's just going to get worse. More people will die, I think. And I thought after Colton Boushie, things would change, and then all of a sudden it happened to my family. And I'm like, well, it's just time before it happens again, I think. It's like when I got that call that morning of March 28th, I remember seeing in the local news 2 bodies found roadside Glendon, and and I thought, oh, that's like really sad. And then I got a call about an hour later, and it was my mom, and she said, yeah, those people who were killed, that's Uncle Mo and Jake. And my first thought wasn't of mourning. It was like more so like, this is going to be like Colton Boushie all over again. Like, it was almost, my first thought was of like whatever the story is, whatever happened, we're not going to get true justice. And then, then the sadness, right? But like, as Indigenous people, like, we hear news like that, and we don't even have time to mourn. We're like, we have to there's so many other things we also have to do in that, and it's unfair. If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, you're helping it make sense to us. I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? But I appreciate you wearing your heart on your sleeve today and talking about it. It's always tough as an interviewer. I just like to straight up say it, because you're just asking people, like, please talk about the cold-blooded murders of your uncle and your cousin, and then you just expect people to just talk about it. Talk to us about the death of your child. Talk to us about your friend overdosing. Talk to us about your family going bankrupt. Talk to us about losing everything. And it's like we ask, but by participating in these conversations, by you showing up for this conversation today, you're deepening all of our understanding of it, which I'm really grateful for. I just, like I said to this audience from the minute that I first met you, Will, I was like, we need to get this guy in front of this audience, because you are one of those people that shows up every single day for other people. And we need more of you, quite frankly, friend. And if people don't do anything else today, the one thing that they need to do is follow you on Instagram, because that's planting the seed. To better understand what's happening around us. And with people that oftentimes don't have that voice, the wolves are calling is Will's Instagram account.
It's a bit unhinged. It's like,
dude,
it's like, are you gonna get a picture of my face? Are you gonna get, like 5 ways to be a better ally?
Yeah. Well, perfect. That's real life. That's like my Instagram too. It's just like, and also some amazing hiking photos. You're a real nature guy too, so people can expect that.
Yeah, lots of photos of outside, and then just outreach photo dumps, what I see on my walks.
Thank you for sharing, and mad respect to you,
Will. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. We'll connect soon.
We will. I'll see you around the city. That's Will Cardinal-Mawer from Wolf Lake, Alberta, a street outreach worker with Abyssal Center. You can check them out online at abyssalcenter.org. Just a remarkable guy. And we're going to keep doing that. When I meet people, when John meets people, when our team at Relay meets people that are making an impact in communities across Canada, and for that matter around the world. I think of Ray Elisa Teagan that checked in from Damascus, Syria a few months ago. That was another example. She wrote in. She's like, I listen to the show all the time. I couldn't help but notice, like, the background, like, what are you doing in Syria? Do you remember that interview? And then she showed up and talked to us about the work she's doing there. And I'm just like, these are people that form the Real Talk audience. Like, Will's a real talker. And I want you to know, as someone who subscribes to this show, supports this show, that these are our people that give a shit, quite frankly, deeply, and show up every day to prove it. Will, just a remarkable guy. In a second, we're going to talk to you about a really neat app and website that's really trying to address food waste around the world. That's coming up in just a quick second. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at Friesen Brothers. Alberta grown, Alberta owned for more than 65 years. Friesen Brothers in 16 different Alberta communities. Family is big for them. They talk about putting good food on the table and the conversation, the fellowship that can ensue, but sometimes you don't want to cook. You want to show up. All-you-can-eat medieval feast coming up at Friesen Brothers just a few days from now. Matter of fact, September 17th and 18th at select locations. You can get the details at friesen.com. That's Freson.com. Plus, their Thanksgiving dinner boxes are now available. For $60, you can feed a family of 4. All the details on the website at Friesen Brothers. Our friends at Park Power are doing their best to keep costs down for Albertans when it comes to electricity, natural gas, and internet. We know that the rates have fluctuated. They've got their fixed rates, their variable rates. You can pick the rate that's right for you after comparing what you're paying right now to what you would be paying with Park Power. We hear from Real Talkers again and again and again that after you've switched to Park Power, you're paying less. Especially if you're bundling all your services together, those three, internet, electricity, natural gas, the administration costs are lower, and $70 off your first bill with the promo code 2022-RealTalk at parkpower.ca. At St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge, you will find the best selection and the lowest price on the Chrysler Jeep Ram lineup across the province of Alberta. Why? Because they can double up their inventory, these two dealerships, and they can ensure that you find the perfect fit, the vehicle you or your family truly needs. So whether you're downsizing your ride based on the cost of fuel, or maybe you're upsizing your ride, maybe there's a new arrival on the way, you can shop Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge online or in person today. You'll find them under the Sponsors tab on our website. Well, this has become one of our favorite features every single week here on Real Talk on Tuesday. Thanks to our friends at Leading Edge Physiotherapy, we celebrate a person, a group, an invention that's innovating in its own space. It's the Leading Edge. And this week in the spotlight, it's the Too Good To Go website. I absolutely love this. So 40% of food wasted around the world. We know that. Unacceptable, right? Can we all agree? Well, this website and app is matching businesses in the food industry that have an excess of product with local hungry residents at discounted prices to ensure the food doesn't go to waste and the business can still profit. Right? So to make sure that food gets eaten, not wasted every day, we're talking about bakeries, restaurants, hotels, grocery stores. The Too Good To Go app lets customers buy and collect surprise bags of the food at a third of the price directly from those businesses. So businesses can enroll themselves on the website. That's one way to get involved. And then also, of course, customers can do the same as well, right? The website's been around for a few years now, and it's soon going to be in our neck of the woods too. As a matter of fact, they've launched in Canada just about a year ago. They've already helped more than 2,500 businesses save almost 500,000 meals nationwide. The free app will be expanding into Edmonton coming up on May 18th. That'll help Edmonton join Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary, already part of this global movement against food waste. They're calling it the democratization of the fight against food waste, where we can all have a role. If you want to learn more about this or get involved, you can check them out online at toogoodtogo.ca. Selling surplus food just got easy. Too Good To Go is helping global citizens cut down on food waste, helping feed the hungry on fixed budgets, and that's why Too Good To Go is in the spotlight in this week's edition of The Leading Edge, presented by Leading Edge Physiotherapy. Life shouldn't hurt. The show has flown by. Sometimes we get lost in conversation, really meaningful conversation making us think, and the next thing you know, it's time to say goodbye. The good news is, as soon as we do that, we start working on tomorrow's show, and the show after that, and the show after that. Still to come this week, we're going to check in with Linda Steele and Jody Vance. Just a few days ago, they launched their new show on Check. A really neat business model. Employees own the station. And of course, they're moving talk in a great direction on the West Coast. We're going to talk to some of the people that were behind the scenes on the Jean Charest campaign. How did they respectfully get blown out of the water? And what does the Conservative Party look like through their eyes moving forward? And the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship winner. You'll meet her right here on Friday.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta, on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.